Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg, and welcome to It's Okay to Be Old. My guest today is Carrie Aalberts, and she is the dementia darling. And she is a darling. I've met her many times online, but now, and once in person in Europe, we had a wonderful time together. And now she's here on the show to tell us all about what she does. And I'm so impressed. She's a dedicated educator with a master's in gerontology. She's a tireless advocate for the well being for those affected by dementia and for those who care for them. That's really the critical part. She's committed to sharing knowledge, resources, and encouragement to all that need it, and is devoted to empowering the caretakers. And this is something we really have to look at as improving the quality of life for the individuals who are not only affected by dementia, but all of those around them. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to see you again and be able to chat. It's such an honor. It's
Absolutely.
so cool that we got to meet where we did, and so I'm so happy to be here.
And it feels like old friends, every time we catch up, it's
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
yeah, it's wonderful. So I just would like to start out by sharing with our audience what dementia is.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So, it's so misunderstood and rightfully so. It's hard to
Yeah.
explain, first off.
Uh,
And so I want to say if you have trouble understanding, do not be discouraged or feel like, oh my gosh, why can't I get this? Because it is difficult. So dementia and Alzheimer's are not the same thing. Dementia is like an overarching like umbrella, if you will. And there are over 120 different causes for dementia. So Alzheimer's causes dementia, for example. So you would say, oh, she has dementia because of her Alzheimer's, if you will. So that's how I like to, remember it. But dementia is a set of symptoms that become so severe that they impede daily life. So, for example, it's not just memory issues, it's other, executive functioning issues. It's, being able to plan, being able to, follow different directions. There's multiple things. And depending on the part of the brain that the dementia is, beginning in and the type of dementia, for example, like frontal temporal dementia, FTD, is really, being kind of talked about because that's what Bruce Willis is living with. And that starts the frontal temporal areas, and that usually changes someone's personality, not changing their memory necessarily first. So it goes, kind of unnoticed. So it's important to know that dementia is not just memory loss, and that it's a full set of different symptoms that get progressively worse.
so, knowing that, I've studied it to some degree. So, it could be a natural organic progression of age, it could be a head injury, it could be another disease where this is a secondary problem from that disease.
Yep.
So, where do we draw the line on what's treatable or what's manageable, and if at all, reversible?
From so there are a set of dementias that are reversible or treatable in the sense of vitamin deficiencies or medication induced dementias, different types of delirium type dementia. There's different, a lot of people actually experience the same symptoms, but they have depression. And so these type of things can be treated. But I don't see anything that is reversible in the sense of Alzheimer's or, the dementias that, I mean, dementia, we do not have any, treatment for. You just do your best to be as healthy as possible for your, brain health in all the areas, holistically, socially, emotionally, physically, all the things, is, your best bet in helping slow the progression of dementia. But it's just unfortunate we do not have, a cure yet. We do not have really treatment. We have some treatment options that are quite expensive, and you can only use them in the very beginning if you
Okay.
get lucky and get that, caught in the beginning stages. But, out of the top 10 uh, biggest causes of death in America, this is the only one on the top 10 list that does not have a treatment or cure option.
So that's the big question, and it's a heavy question. And I'm sorry I'm asking it early, but it just came to me. The cause of someone's death could be dementia. Dementia can cause death. Okay, because it's brain deterioration.
Yeah, and but there's often comorbidities,
Yes.
that might lead to that faster, if you will. But it's really heavy, dark subject, and but it needs to be talked about. So I thank you for talking about it, and I just think that it's misunderstood that yes, dementia can, eventually it progresses to that. So it's just the worst. Dementia sucks.
Yep. Carrie, how did you come to specialize in dementia care?
Yeah. Well, it first was in my family. So my grandmother passed away from dementia when I was 13, and my dad was her main caregiver. So that like started, if you will, that planted the seed for me. But when I got to college, the University of Nevada, Reno, and they had a gerontology program, I was able to really dive into learning about aging. My parents were a big support in that because they're like, hey, you can't go wrong going into this field. You're never going to lose you're never
Yeah.
not going to have a job or what have you, because we're all aging. So, I really loved being able to study gerontology, and my first job was at an intergenerational adult daycare center. So there was a preschool on site, and they would come over twice a day and see all the grandmas and grandpas that I had
Wow.
pleasure to take
Wow.
care of. Yeah, so it was a beautiful time, and I was a caregiver, and we did all the things, and that solidified why I'm on this planet. That job truly was like, this is it. This is why I'm here. And going on to be in memory care and assisted living areas as a activity director, so being the one that brings the fun, and is
Yeah.
kind of that's a lot of pressure keeping people, finding their joy and purpose. And so I did that, and then kind of worked my way up through being a director of an adult daycare center, and then got super burnt out. But through that whole experience of all my jobs, I noticed these family caregivers who were often years and years into their journey hadn't been told thank you in forever, haven't been asked how are you, haven't been told this sucks, are you, oh my gosh, can I help you, and just given a hug or had a cheerleader, just make them feel seen. So I started on social media, Dementia Darling, over 5 years ago. And as of today, I am full-time Dementia Darling, and support family caregivers and professional caregivers, and try to uplift, the dementia community at large, because we need to change the tragedy narrative that is in dementia care.
And that's what I said the second I met you is this is a cheerleader. This is
Thank you.
and you're not even on the sidelines, you're on the field. You're in the
I'm
game.
trying.
Yeah. Yep. Um, Carrie, what are some of the considerations in the stages of dementia? Uh, uh, we could talk about the overall stages, but uh, where do we start looking if there's a problem?
So when do we start maybe noticing, like, what would you
Yeah,
notice?
I guess the dilemma is worldwide, is that someone says, I forgot something, and it just you're busy and you're
Yeah.
distracted, right? Or someone else says, mom, dad, or brother, sister, or whatever the relationship, you keep seeming to not remembering things. Like,
Yeah.
so this early onset, this early stages and advanced stages. Could you kind of walk us through that a little
Yeah,
bit?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it can be really hard, right? Because we kind of assume, oh my gosh, I forgot something. I have Alzheimer's or I have dementia, and it's scary. But the thing that we have to note is, first off, if you start feeling or seeing things in a loved one or in yourself that you're forgetting things, or oh, I left the stove on a little longer than I noticed, or something like that, write it down, because once we notice that this is becoming reoccurring, that's when it's an issue, when it's becoming something that is impeding daily life. So if it's just once in a while you forget things, that is normal aging. But if you are driving home from the doctor's office that you've been to for 20 years and you forgot how to get home from there, that's when, okay, that's a little off for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, not having the right words for everyday objects you've known, things like, maybe these things, we need to pay attention to. But, really things that are out of ordinary for ourselves and are occurring consistently. We need to pay attention to that. And so don't freak out just because you forgot something, but when it's really kind of out of the ordinary in a way, and then that consistency is what you need to be looking for.
Let me throw a little side thing in there.
Ah,
You know more than anyone, I'm in my 60s, you're in your 30s. If you didn't eat enough that day or you haven't had a good night's sleep, oh my goodness,
yeah.
all kinds of symptoms appear in your body, right? So I'd imagine the health habits that I'm always spewing to everybody plays a role when you have dementia, that you still need to sleep well. There's no giving up here, right? You still need to
No.
sleep well. You still need to eat well. You need to keep your house organized, whether you're 20 or 80. Those are very, very good habits. Does that help the day-to-day issues that a dementia patient has?
Yes,
Yeah.
the better that you can take
Not a
care of
runaway
yourself.
train is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and that's that tragedy narrative.
Yes,
When our doctors say get your affairs in order right when
yes,
you get a diagnosis, that's not, they don't get that you can live well with dementia, and you
yes.
can live well with dementia for 20 years.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, you can't write yourself off,
right.
or you will start losing abilities because you're writing yourself off. And
Yeah.
that's why we have to be able to show that there is joy and that there is life after a dementia diagnosis if you have the right supports and you are able to adapt. It's just like anything in life. We have to adapt, and yeah, things are going to change, but you can still live. And yeah, and there's so much more support these days. It's only getting better, and there's no shame in having dementia. There's millions of people living with dementia, and the sooner you get the help and support and talk about it, the better for everyone. And like you said, I mean, we can it can be scary, but it can also be, depression you're dealing with. It can be something with your medications. It might not be dementia.
Right.
So at least reach out to your doctor and see what else could be going on too. We don't have to jump right to dementia either. But
Yeah,
yeah, once
yeah.
you're seeing that, we need to, talk to a doctor.
Now, Carrie, is there a target age in which dementia sets in? Does there seem to be a narrow time?
So it's so one thing about dementia that is very misunderstood is, first off, there are childhood dementias,
Mm,
and there are dementias that people can get any time in their life. You can be any age and develop dementia. So it is not this quote unquote older person's disease. And I just want to make that really understood.
mhm.
There are people in their 30s and 40s getting dementia right now and living in memory care
Wow.
communities. And we're going to see more and more and more of this. So another thing is because, we often would say that, you're only going to see it in older adults and really, older, maybe 85 and up. 85 and up, half of people are living with dementia. So right there, and it only gets higher every year after 85. So 85, half, and then more and more and more.
Okay. Okay.
So you're going to see a lot there, but really, I think, you see between, I mean, I see so many of these younger onset, from, 55, 65, but it's really all across the board. I mean, honestly, I would say, but you're for sure going to see, I feel like the most still in those older, 85 and up, because statistically there, yeah.
I'll share a personal story because I have a question about it. My
Please.
mother-in-law was living in Israel and we moved her back to the United States in her 90s. Now
Mhm.
she's European. She did not grow up in the United States. She came, I'm going to assume she was in her 30s. It was after World War II. My husband was
Mhm.
in Europe. They came over here. She never Americanized. She never quite spoke English well. And now let's fast forward. I met her later because my husband and I are a later in life marriage. So she moved in with me. She had to be 93-ish. Sharp as we used to call her the card shark. She'd always win at cards. She knew when it was dinner time. Carrie, it really felt like overnight. One day she said, where's Aaron? Why isn't he home? That's my husband. And then she mixed him up with her husband. Then she didn't know who I was. And we went through this period. We played cards and she'd put anything down and thought she won. And I learned early, let her win. Don't Don't make her even more distracted. And the caregivers that came, my daughter was little, and you know that witching hour when you have a little kid, 4 in the afternoon till
Oh,
7, between dinner time, dancing school, whatever it is you're doing, you're not around. And the ladies would leave early because I wasn't home, and they'd shut all the lights off and leave my mother-in-law sitting in the kitchen because it was sunny out. And then the sun would come down, and I would come home, and she was so baffled and so
oh
confused.
no.
So to me, that was such abuse. It was so horrible. So we switched the care over to having somebody come in the afternoon. But what I noticed, and still to this day astounds me, as it got further along, we'd say, "Who's Aaron?" And she'd say, "That's my brother." She'd point to Aaron, and she'd go to the staircase, which she couldn't climb. And she'd say, "I'm going upstairs to visit the neighbor." And we worked through it. We were fine. But she died at 103. So this was
Wow.
a number of years, okay? And she knew everything from 50 years ago. So if you brought her back to that, you had a perfectly normal conversation. She's Hungarian. My husband had a friend who grew up in the same town who still spoke the language. He would come over and start speaking to her. She would completely wake up. It was like she was totally normal and engaged. And that astounded me. She had
Yeah.
no idea. She was living in my home. She had no idea who I was. The dogs would come in. She said, "Who do those dogs belong to?" Like, no. And it was never mean, never cruel, never just, "Who are you? And who are the dogs? And why are they
Yeah.
here?" But that disconnect from early life to later life was astounding. Could you explain
Wild.
a little bit how that?
I don't really know the the
Yeah.
brain
Yeah.
composition,
Okay.
why that happens,
Yeah.
honestly. It's just how the brain is in decline.
Yeah.
It gets to the short-term memory first, and for some reason with most dementias, it's most likely, I believe that would be more so Alzheimer's, is it takes away that short term and it just leaves them with that long term as long as possible. It stays pretty intact until maybe they're not able to verbalize anymore. But but it's one of the kind of, if you will, silver lining beautiful things, because you get to learn about someone that you might never have learned about because they're literally in this different time in their life and they're connected with it again and they can speak to you on it. And, people often say, I never would have known my mom like the way I know
Yeah.
her
Mhm.
now, and things like that. And I think it's so interesting. And then when you revert back to your native tongue, that is so cool
Yes.
and can, like you said, bring out a different side and vibrancy, because they might go to a time when they didn't know that the language they were speaking
Yes.
last with
Yes.
you. And
Mhm.
so that can just be super isolating even more. So can you imagine? Yeah, someone comes in and can speak to you. So it is a really interesting thing, and the sooner that people understand going into their world with them is going to be easier for everyone involved is such a gift, because but it's normal, it's natural to want to fight that because you're like, come on mom, you're
Yeah.
not, you know
Yeah.
we're here, da, da, da. It's so hard, and so that is valid, but once we can really see, the beauty in meeting them in this world and in this reality is really cool. And when you can step into that and be still a loved one in that time in their life, maybe you're not the daughter, but you're the sister or the mom, you're
Mhm.
still a loved one in their world
Right. Right.
and you're still a safe person. And that's beautiful.
Let's talk about the surroundings a little bit. So, someone's in their 90s. They
Yeah.
grew up in the old country in Europe. They got displaced through the war for a variety of reasons, ended up in a succession of apartments. Then all of a sudden they're going from New York to Los Angeles in a new home. I mean, and uh, w- fast forward, you have a person, they might be in a memory care unit or just a classic assisted living facility. How do you make that environment comfortable? Because it's got to be so far into them, even when you're lucid. Um,
It's such a problem. It's such a problem. I,
Hanging
and
pictures, old
yeah,
blankets, those kinds of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, first off, we're such in a medical model system,
Yes.
and we say, and I say this all the time now, after visiting Hogevik, the village in the Netherlands, we preach in the US familiarity and home-like environments, but we put them in hospital-like settings that no one lives in,
Yeah.
and we call it home. It's not conducive to people living with dementia. They've never lived in these environments, so we can't assume they would feel comfortable. So yes, it's bringing anything possible that is from their life before, that can be on the walls surrounding them to just remind them of, something that's comfortable and familiar. Yeah, blankets, comfort items of any sort. But we also have to be aware of not over cluttering because that can be overstimulating and can be a tripping hazard, whatever, all the things. And, we don't want people ruining things necessarily. You want to be careful of really important family heirlooms and things like that. So, but yeah, having as many comfort items, pictures that mean a lot to them. But remember, to be a little careful because I learned the hard way. More recent pictures can be a little triggering because they
Oh,
don't see
interesting.
themselves as
Okay.
that age.
Yeah.
So bring
Okay.
in older pictures, yeah,
Okay. Okay.
and that's better to focus on. So,
So
yeah.
the other consideration, this is my baby that I've been trying to, is roommating. Is when people get older, there are so many men and women in my age group that are divorced or widowed and living
Yeah,
alone all over the country.
yeah.
Hear it over and over. And when I do my conferences and my seminars, there's always a focus on loneliness, socializing, getting people out. So I know that memory care units and assisted living facilities and just retirement communities in
Yeah.
general have an endless amount of activities to engage people in. Why not roommating?
I think that's so smart.
Are you with me on that?
Oh,
Because
I'm completely
yeah,
in saving
yeah,
money. Are you kidding? It's so
yeah,
expensive for any care. And
yes,
and that's the thing is we often see in when I was working in memory care and I hear it to this day is, a lot of families just assume, oh, my mom would never want to live with someone. She
right,
cannot share her
right,
room. And we actually realize, but she might be in college in her brain and loving
yeah,
the dorm
yeah,
life and
yeah, yeah,
that's not necessarily that, but I'm just saying she might
yes,
really need that socialization that it's not an issue. And if you're not in your room that much, you're out with people, you can save some money. Like we shouldn't write it off right
right,
away.
right. Mhm.
But I think that, co-housing and co-living is the future on so many levels, and the isolation is truly killing people. So we need to do things like that and be in community with one another.
Even like in a house where there's 4 bedrooms, some of these board and cares where people will
Yeah.
take older people, there's a living room, there's a kitchen, people can come in and interact with others, and even if it helps this much, it's worth it.
Oh, I agree. Well, I
Sure,
love in
financially
yeah,
for sure, that makes a huge difference,
well,
right?
yeah, and I love in the Netherlands they have that program where college students live in the nursing
Yes,
homes,
yes,
and it's beautiful and everyone benefits. I mean, I think that's how we should be doing things for sure.
absolutely. And you
Yeah.
can share love with someone that's not a family member.
Yes.
Even if you're not related, the person could become your new grandma and grandpa and so forth. And they feel that way about you.
Yeah.
It's that you're a
Intergenerational relationships are so important to all of us.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Carrie, let's move over to talk a little bit about your focus on the needs of the dementia caregivers. That's a
Yeah.
bottom bit of subject matter, but
Yeah.
yeah, talk to us a little bit about what you do with that because I know that's a big part of your work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I am just really dedicated to making sure, because as we're talking about isolation, that caregivers feel seen.
Yeah.
They do not feel seen. They do not feel heard. And they feel like their sole purpose is caregiving, and then they're lost when the caregiving ends potentially. It just all these things are against caregivers, and it's not fair because there's millions of caregivers, but they still can't find each other. So I'm just really dedicated to, utilizing social media to build community. But as I grow into my role as dementia darling and, get the capacity to help people in their actual communities find each other, that's a goal of mine because we need to find our people. And unfortunately, I think we all know as we age, the people you assume will show up for you don't always necessarily show up for you. And that is
Absolutely.
spot
Mhm.
on for caregivers. And so we can't dwell on that and we need to go find our community. And I want to make it easier for caregivers to find their people. Because when we feel seen or at least just have someone to cry with, it's a world of a difference. And so, yeah, I work hard at lifting up caregiver voices, not only in my, work on education on social media, but when I'm speaking for professionals, my goal is to always lift up the family caregiver voice and perspective and people living with dementia. So people that are working in this space can truly understand who they're working with. And I'm a part of the Age Tech space in the AARP Age Tech Collaborative, and I'm, a service that can help companies that are building tech for the community I serve to truly understand the perspective of who they're building for. So that's really how I try to, do my part in this huge puzzle that is, trying to change the system and this tragedy narrative of aging and dementia.
I want to break it into two categories also. There's the caretaker who is a
Hmm.
family member, and that could be a spouse, a child, and in some
Yep.
cases, a parent. Um, and I'm trying to figure out how do we, that's a whole type of support that's needed. What about the paid caregivers?
Yeah.
They're not too happy themselves right now either for a
No.
variety of reasons. And a lot of it is the, like you say, thankless, not being paid. And somebody just bring somebody a cookie or just
Oh,
say hello, just say thank you. I don't know what happened in our world that these people are not being acknowledged, even on the most minimal level.
I mean, it's horrific. I just actually did in November a cruise for CNAs.
Oh,
So it was
wow. Wow.
200 CNAs and frontline care staff at sea
Wow.
celebrating them. And it was the first ever one to do that. And I did 2 dementia sessions. And my second dementia education session turned into not that, it turned into a venting because no one had ever asked them what they'd been through. And when you have gone through really difficult care scenarios with people living with dementia that you love, and because that's what I can relate with. I've been a professional caregiver. I've been with people as they have passed away and never had anyone on the management team ask, "Are you okay?" or offer support for me. And as a young girl, I mean, I was horrified and lost and felt no support, and it was really hard for me. I almost left the industry. And so I just having that opportunity, I mean, people, we were crying, we were laughing, I mean, just getting on a personal level that everyone needed there. And so that just opened another, door in my mind of how needed it is to just have safe places for these people to talk about what they're going through. And a lot of them are going home to people living with dementia as well that they're caring for. And I've been a big, you know, cheerleader for mental health support for professional caregivers, because I mean, as I just said, I didn't get it. So I really want to change that perception and why it's important. I mean, this is not a regular industry. This is
Right.
life and death. This is people's lives, people that have lived such rich lives. And we know as frontline workers that we can't give them what they deserve. And it's really difficult. So yeah, there's just so many things that are broken and we need to work on it.
So, in the advocacy area, in
Mhm.
terms of what's cooking right now, are they trying to get more staff, better
I mean,
paid,
always.
better what's the word I'm looking for? Better prepared, better educated, training, that kind of thing. What's
I
the biggest lack, I guess is what I'm asking. I guess it's all
I
of the above, right?
It's everything. I mean, they can't keep staff because they don't want to pay well or appreciate them. And I'm not trying to be negative on this like blanketed level. There's wonderful places out there,
Yes.
but
Yes.
there needs to be systematic change. And unfortunately, we have to wait for the people at the top to figure it out. And so speaking up and pushing back and giving voices to family caregivers is what we need to be doing. And frontline professional staff and management, they need to have, be empowered to speak up. There's just so much against, these people. I mean, these companies will pay so much for the way that their, community looks, but they won't actually put money into the education that these people need to care for their residents. And I'm sorry, if your residents and your staff have better quality of life, if you really have to look at it at a monetary standpoint, they're going to live longer, they're going to pay rent longer. So quality of life, work on it. But there's just so many things we need to work on, and it's those new boutique memory cares that are popping up that are the future. It's adult daycare. That's the affordable future for a lot of people. It is small group housing that's coming more up. I mean, people can't afford these $15,000 a month communities that I'm seeing. It's wild.
Yeah, I have a friend whose mother, the buy-in was $1 million. It's one of these incredibly she California, Southern California. The grounds are gorgeous, the whole thing. And I was thinking the same thing. She's paying this to live in an apartment and be neglected unless her family comes to see her.
Yep, and I'm sure
Bottom
the
line, okay,
care staff gets like $12 an hour.
yeah, terrible. So, Carrie, your social media presence is wildly successful. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you.
You.
You've got 50,000,
Thank you.
and all told, I'm sure you have a lot more. But the online support is robust. But how do you manage to convey accurate information above all the noise? We all struggle with this, but there's a lot of crappy information out there.
I know. It's so hard. I just try to show up as authentically as possible. And if I'm wrong on something, I will admit it. I'll be the
Yeah.
first to say, okay, I did not know. And I just think that really you can tell when people are being genuine. And one thing, that really bothers me is, people that are trying to give medical advice and they're not a doctor or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, just be aware of the credentials. I mean, I don't ever would never tell someone, what medicines to take or something like that. So just, be aware of what you're taking in, and the credentials behind the person, and just kind of the intention behind their education as well will tell you a lot. But I just think showing up truly as an authentic supporter and is what's been, successful for me. Is I'm just not trying to pretend I'm anything but here to truly support caregivers.
And do you feel that your services are respected and revered by the companies you're working with? Are they looking for the help? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's an honor that, people want to work with me, and I just love finding new companies that are doing great things in this space and to make life a little easier for the caregiving community or people living with dementia. So yeah, no, I think it's pretty exciting to see how many opportunities, are coming. But we need more. We are not ready for the aging population to come with dementia and all the things.
Uh, I have two questions for you. First one is, what do you see as the approach in countries outside of North America? Netherlands, France, Germany.
No.
And in fact, when we were together, you had been traveling through several different countries for fun and business, but it's different there. They care so much more about the well-being of their grandparents.
Yes, it's a way more intergenerational family support environment. Usually, families live together, so they have, support around. It is also just a more healthy environment, right? Everyone walks everywhere. You
Yes,
can walk
yes,
everywhere.
yes.
So there's, less pollution as well on top of it. You're eating fresher foods. You're socializing because you're walking everywhere and you live in closer proximity to more people. There's just so many benefits over there. And then the fact that if they do need help, care is covered.
Yeah, yeah,
What a thought.
right.
So it's just, I think that there's just such a different thought over there because they don't have to almost fear getting sick or older, or they have the supports in place. So excuse me. I really got the impression that aging was way more celebrated in all the places that I was at, and it was just more respected, which was so beautiful.
Get past, I'm throwing this in. We didn't discuss this on the pre-questionnaire, if you will. How do we get past telling someone, I hear this all the time, that they don't want to be a burden on another person, so they don't tell people what they need? I'm talking about the patient. They don't
Hmm.
really come clean about how bad the memory loss is, or how bad the pain is, or the illness, or the loneliness, whatever it might be, or they can't taste their food well and they don't want to tell anyone. Are there techniques to pull that out of someone?
You know, just validation as
Okay.
much as possible.
Okay.
I
Hmm.
think it's just really hard for certain generations to admit that they're hurting, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I hope changes because we are human. And
Yeah.
so I would just try to say, as if you think someone isn't wanting to share, you know, relating in the sense of, man, if I was in that situation, that would be so tough. And I can't imagine. And I would hope that you would, like I would want to talk about it. So
Yeah.
if you want to
Yeah.
talk about it, but validating and truly making sure that it's doesn't sound belittling or, um, you know, just in any way, um, like you're coming off like you're going to attack them or anything like it just needs to be so genuinely validating and just like this sucks. But if you tell me I can help you and I want to help you, and I think the person that doesn't want to share, that is really hard because I'm a really open person, so I can't relate with that. But I think it's just you owe it to the people that love you, that want to help you, and it's not a burden.
Right.
It's not. They're going to be sad that they never knew that and they could have helped you. And you can't do this alone. This is especially living with dementia or caring for someone living with dementia, is one of the hardest things people go through. But there are beautiful things. I'm not trying to like say it's like all doom and gloom, but you can't do that journey alone. It's too heavy on either side of
For
that
everybody, for
for
everybody.
everyone, and you need
Yeah.
to speak up, and it's
Yeah.
okay. No one's going to be mad at you. They're going to be grateful you're being honest, especially if you've never really been honest with other people, that they're going to be so grateful that you're, doing this and that they can do all that they can with you while we're together and have those opportunities to be together and show up for each other. Allow people to show up for you. And but I know it's hard. I know it's really hard. So,
It's
but just be
something yeah, I always talk about, like whether it's with grief or with, I've learned to say to the person, I'll bring you food. Just say, what do you need?
yeah,
Ask them what they need. Everybody's sending food or everybody's doing something and it's not what they want. It's
yeah,
not what they like.
yeah,
It's not and they're gracious and say thank you. But it's
yeah.
finding out, like you said, acknowledging the suckiness of the whole thing and then saying, what can I do? Carrie, I want to talk a little bit about the health consequences of the 24-hour caregiving that most people don't think about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just heartbreaking what caregivers are up against. And I'm often talking about naming grief and the complex, ever growing grief of caring for someone with a progressive disease. And then the financial strain, the mental strain, the physical strain as you have to care with someone, the physicalness of that. Um, and just the mental health strain though is so prominent, and I don't feel like we're there yet where they even have a lot of opportunity to talk to mental health professionals that understand caregiving trauma and the things that come with that. But the isolation is so great, but there's just so much that dementia caregivers are carrying that I don't think people understand, and it solely gets put on usually one person, and even when a family has many siblings or many
Yes,
people
yes,
could be
yes, I've
helping.
seen that.
It's usually one person that is bearing that weight. And it's unfortunate because I think it's about a Harvard study. I believe it was Harvard. Yeah, came out with a study, and it was 40% of caregivers of someone living with dementia will die before their loved one because of the strain that it
Oh,
leads to
oh, that's
specifically.
terrible.
It's
That's
scary. It
terrible.
leads to health concerns. Yeah. And I could count a few on my hand of through my career of wives that developed like blood diseases from
Mm-hmm,
stress.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It is really scary stuff. And this is why it's so important to give caregivers the support that they need and the respite. But society has still not figured it out.
That was leads to my next question, which is, three quick tips you can share with us to help people while they're caregiving, just to take a pause. What are three quick little things they could do besides,
As a caregiver,
yeah, besides breathing deep and having a glass of wine?
oh my gosh, seriously though,
Yeah.
hiding and crying.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's really hard, but I think making time, even if it's 5 minutes, to if you're someone that's social and needs that to fill up your cup, to talk to someone that fills your cup.
Okay.
Because sometimes you're only talking to people that have to do with your loved one and
Yeah.
their condition or what's going on, doctors, and you forget to talk to your people and things
Mm-hmm,
that have
mm-hmm,
nothing to do with caregiving.
mm-hmm.
So I think that's really important, and making time for anything that is important for you. And sometimes, caregivers say, I can't even do a couple minutes a day. And you know what? That is valid. And if this season in your life, that is where you're at, it's okay. But things will get better, and you will have different seasons of different times of self-care. And whatever that may look like, you just meet yourself where you are. It's okay. But finding something that brings you joy, finding something that gives you energy, whether that be a walk, whether that be a podcast, whatever it can be. But if you're a
Maybe a
person,
funny movie or something that just
yeah,
makes you laugh.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And please, if you are, always focusing on what does your loved one want to do, the person you're caring for want to do, they can do things you want to do. You're allowed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's excellent advice.
So
That's the
yeah,
best thing I've heard from all of this, is that you're allowed to smile and have fun too. Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
allowed. You
You're
are
allowed.
worthy.
You are allowed. Absolutely. So thank you so much, Carrie
Thank you.
Aalberts, Dementia Darling, for joining us and sharing such
Thank
valuable
you.
information to the listeners. And if you or someone you know is suffering as a patient or a caregiver, there is help and there is hope. Please reach out to Carrie at Dementia Darling, www.dementiadarling.com, and at Dementia Darling on all social media. Carrie Aalberts, last but not least, I always ask my guests, what do you like about getting older?
Oh my gosh. I love that I'm finally starting to let go of what other people think about me. And that I think it's going to get easier as I age. And I think that's pretty cool.
That's the best. Yeah, that's just, don't care what anybody thinks. You do you, you live, you live you. And again,
Yes.
thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you.
And we'll do it again because there's so much
Yes,
more to talk about, right?
please, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to It's Okay to Be Old. Please subscribe to my channel, Patricia Greenberg, It's Okay to Be Old, for our engaging discussions on all things aging well. For feedback and topic requests, you can contact me at www.itsokaytobeold. Stay safe and stay well. Thank you, Carrie.
Bye.